Hello, my name is Sarah Kent. I'm a board certified pediatric nurse practitioner, as well as a board certified psychiatric provider who treats patients from ages 2 months to 115 years old. I'm also a registered nurse. The topic of today's learning journey is anger. We're going to examine the purpose of anger, the cues and warning signs of anger, and ways that you can learn to manage your anger so that you can control your anger rather than your anger controlling you. So, what is anger? If you're in a group, this might be a good time to pause and have a group discussion about what is anger.
Is anger?
What is anger?
What is anger?
The car goes moo.
What is anger?
Anger. Why do I have to describe that?
Anger.
Oh, you got to give me a second to think about it first. Um, I don't know. Negative emotional response again. That is
Anger is both an emotional and a physical response to a stimulus. Basically, something upsets you, and it upsets you so much that even your body reacts. It goes beyond, and it spirals out of control.
What is anger?
I guess it's an emotion where I don't know, for whatever reason you have negative feelings towards a person or thing or something, towards something outward.
Anger.
Uh, it's a negative emotion. Sometimes you might feel it in your head or your hands. It might make you want to respond negatively to other people or the world around you. But if you channel it properly and manage it, then you can overcome those feelings and not act on them.
I've always looked at the world from an evolutionary perspective. So let's ask, we've been on this earth for quite some time now. Our ancestors lived on the earth approximately 6 billion years ago. However, according to what we have found archaeologically, it appears that the first human probably came into being between 5 and 7 million years ago. 315,000 years ago, a fossil of what is believed to be a member of the species Homo sapiens was found with tools alongside in Morocco. Around 40,000 years ago seems to have been a time of flourishing human creativity as Cro-Magnons in Europe created advanced artifacts of abstract and symbolic thought, including more advanced tools, burying their dead in more ceremonial manner, and becoming more self-conscious, with the result that humans were creating beads and pendants for body ornamentation and finely wrought figurines of beautiful women. They began to record stories by painting deer, horses, and bulls on cave walls, and archaeological evidence indicates that the genetic mutation from which our species arose occurred spontaneously in several locations, including East Africa and Morocco. Does your mind ever wander to what it would be like to be an early Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon living in caves and hunting animals with spears?
From a skull such as this, anthropologists have been able to show us how some prehistoric men probably looked. They had low foreheads and thick skulls. They were generally shorter and stockier than modern men, but they walked more or less erectly. Their hands were much like our hands. Somehow these men learned to use their hands to grasp objects. A stone could be used as a simple tool. A stick could be handled as a simple weapon. Now men had more than their bare fists to use in the struggle to live. An even greater discovery was made when early men learned that they could shape a piece of flint by chipping it with another stone. This was one of the first. Some of them took shelter in caves, and in some way, they had made one of the greatest discoveries of man. They had learned civilization without fire? With fire, prehistoric man could keep himself warm, and he could cook his food. Much of the food was meat brought in by the hunters, who killed game with their stone-tipped weapons. Prehistoric hunters painted animals they knew on the walls of their caves. This is a wild horse, as some cave artists drew him thousands of years ago. These pictures are the beginning of art, another achievement of prehistoric man. We can imagine how, by the flickering light of simple oil lamps, prehistoric artists painted pictures of the wild animals they hunted. Sometimes the cavemen carved figures of animals on cave walls and rock ledges. What other contributions did early men make? Let's imagine a scene around a campfire. Some wild dogs are attracted by the scent. However it happened, we know that the taming of wild animals was another... Near the end of the Old Stone Age, hunters were tracking game with the help of their wolf-like dogs. In their constant search for game, the hunters wandered far and wide.
So let's picture a Neanderthal who just killed a big deer and he's preparing it to eat. He started a fire, he's roasting it to perfection, when along comes another Neanderthal, walks up and takes his big deer burger right out of his hand. Imagine if that Neanderthal just sat passively and allowed his meal to be taken away. Then imagine a Neanderthal who feels anger. He feels that something has been done to him that's not right. He has this big juicy steak that he's ready to eat when someone comes up and reaches for it. His adrenaline starts pumping. His heart starts racing. His muscles tense up. He grabs a spear and he hits the would-be party crasher right over the head. The other Neanderthal retreats. And now he's defended his meal and he can enjoy it and share it with his family. So fast forward 300,000 years. My brother, Maynard, was going for a walk in Riverside Park. On a beautiful day, he saw two men approaching him, and his intrinsic fear response was triggered. However, he reasoned it out in his cortex, saying to himself, "How silly of me to feel danger. These two men probably don't mean me any harm." However, he was wrong. One of the men suddenly came toward him and punched him right in the face, knocking his glasses off. My brother had a primal response. He stood up to his full height. He's 6'4", which makes him look bigger. His adrenaline started pumping. The blood rushed to his muscles. He squared his shoulders. And as the blood and adrenaline is coursing through his body, it rushes to his hands. He raises up his hands and he screams with rage, "I am going to kill you!" The men are startled and my brother runs away. That right there was what we call the fight or flight response in action. When you think about our past and how we used to live and how much our environment has changed, you can see how some of our primitive emotions and behaviors that were most advantageous millions of years ago can also trip us up today. So today, we're going to look at what is anger, how did it arise, and how can you skillfully channel anger in a positive way. According to the American Psychological Association, anger is an emotion characterized by antagonism toward someone or something that you feel has deliberately done you wrong. Anger occurs when incoming stimuli travel through the amygdala, which is a part of our brain that is more primitive, to the limbic forebrain. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is activated. When you feel fear, sensory information arriving at the lateral aspect of the amygdala is processed and conveyed to the amygdala's central nucleus, which then projects out to several parts of the brain. At the hypothalamus, fear signaling impulses activate both the sympathetic nervous system and the modulating systems of the HPA axis. Increased production of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, during stress results in an increased availability of glucose in order to facilitate the fight or flight response. As well as directly increasing glucose availability, cortisol also suppresses the highly demanding metabolic processes of the immune system, resulting in further availability of glucose. As you can see, it's an adaptive response. Or is it?